Greetings, everybody. I hope this message finds you well. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the 2023-2024 proposed budget for the Rome City School District. This slideshow here just kind of walks through our budget hearing process if you were not able to make it to our in-person meeting on Monday night, but this will go through the budget and some parts of it, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or the district office, and we'll be happy to help you. As we start the presentation, just like to remind the community of some facts about our school district. Currently, we have 5,453 students. Our total expense per pupil is just over $18,000. On this slide, we also talk about our combined wealth ratio, which for this coming school year is 0.36000. We like to highlight that in our budget presentations because your combined wealth ratio is a factor within your state aid ratios, and this is a measure of the community's wealth based on a formula that Albany has for school districts. 1.00 is average wealth across the state of New York, so at 0.36000, you can see Rome is considerably lower than average wealth community. I will tell you that we believe that with some of the things that are happening in the community, there is an increase of students, there's an increase of population. We believe that number will start moving towards 1.0, which will have an impact on our state aid figures down the road, however, not for this current budget cycle. As we move through, you'll see that 77% of our budget is dedicated towards instruction, which is the largest number in our region. We have a graduation rate currently as a district of 73%, and students that attend RFA is 74%. Our advanced designation rate for the Regents Diploma is up slightly this year at 22%. And probably the most thing to be proud of in the Rome City School District right now is we have 2 elementary schools that have come off the list of the state's needed list of improvement. That is a huge feat for those school communities, the staffs, the teachers, the students and the families. It does not happen very often that a school works their way off the list, meaning they academically get out of the red and are into the positive. So congratulations to both Denty School and Joy School for their efforts. And we currently still have 2 schools identified, and we're moving in the right direction. As you know, things in Rome here, things that factor into our budget that are important for the community to know that may not affect you on a daily basis. Our students with disabilities continue to increase. That is brings with it some cost relevant to the expenditure side of the budget. We also have continued population of homeless students in the district, as well as English new language students moving into the district, all of which have certain sets of regulations and requirements associated with students in those categories that generally will increase your costs a little bit more than what most people might recognize. One thing we talk about when it comes to school budgeting is it's very different than working your personal budget, and a lot of people don't totally understand that. But this slide just meant to demonstrate a couple of basic things when it comes to school budgeting. First and foremost, the community needs to understand a school budget is a spending cap. It's the maximum amount of dollars that a school district could spend if they needed to within their disposal. It's important to know when you build a budget that we're trying to work on this 18 months ahead of when you're actually going to see your final expenditure. So I would say as a person, if you think about it in terms of your personal budget, if we asked you today to plan out your grocery expenses for an entire year, 18 months in advance of when you're going to spend them, you can budget for more than you need, but you can't spend more than you budget for. It would be very challenging to predict 18 months in advance what you're going to need for groceries because there's a lot of factors that can change into that. So in large part, a school budget is an estimate of what a school district might need to spend a year and a half down the road from when they start planning. Our revenue sources, 4 main areas as you should know by now: state aid, local taxes, federal funding, and or your fund balance or reserve allocation. Fund balance and reserves is a big fancy word for your savings account if you're comparing a school budget to your personal finances. But those are our big 4 areas of which our money comes into the community. A lot of our school budgets are fixed costs, meaning that most of the things within a school budget, and this isn't just Rome, this is across the board, your fixed costs are things that are associated with either a bargaining unit contract and or an agreement or a contract you might have with a vendor or an outside party. About 93% of most school district budgets are fixed costs, which really leaves little wiggle room to make changes to escalating rates or things of that nature on the expenditure side. The most important thing I like to highlight when it comes to school district budgets is school districts in general, and this does include Rome, do not spend the entire budget that the voters approve, meaning you approve a number, The district doesn't spend that entire number. It allows us to put some of the money we allocated from our savings account back into our savings account at the end of the year. And at the bottom of this current slide, you'll see a 10-year history of the approved budget and the actual expenditures. So you can see each year some of the money we take out of our savings account to offset the budget difference goes back into the savings account because we aren't spending the entire budget. So we do a very good job of managing that budget here in Rome, and it's been helpful over the years to help stockpile a little bit of reserves, a little bit of fund balance, so that in the event that we have a fiscal cliff, which we feel may be coming in the next 2 or 3 years with foundation aid changes and the COVID money going away, we've got some money in the bank to kind of make sure we can get through those years without having major issues. Moving to some information about the proposed budget for next school year. Our proposed budget currently is $145,869,432. This is a simple pie graph that shows you where that money breaks down. The program budget is 77%. Program budget is anything that's related to instruction or students. The capital budget is 13% of that. Capital budget is any part of your responsibilities to your buildings and your facilities. So your maintenance staff, your custodians, the maintenance on the buildings themselves. And administration budget is 10%. Your administration sounds like you're talking about your school administrators, but it's much more than that. Think of that as anything that's required to function the school district. So your Board of Education, your legal expenses, your postage, your postings, your public relations, yes, your school administrators, secretaries associated with that. So administration is a big bucket of the things that are meant to operate and function a school district. But most importantly, to recognize is that program budget is 77%. As I mentioned, Rome puts more money into our program budget than any of the districts in Oneida County or the Madison Oneida BOCES, and we're very proud that we stay at the top of that list each and every year. This slide simply talks about our proposed expenditures by type, the different types of codes that we have within our school budget. You can see, not abnormal here, your benefits and your payroll codes make up the vast majority of a school budget. Some of the other pieces that we have that are a little bit larger than past years are BOCES codes. We are continuing to work more and more with our BOCES to help programs with students of all kinds at our BOCES, all the way from college level preparatory programs to alternative education and special education programs at BOCES. One thing that's very nice about partnering with your local BOCES is the more we can do with BOCES, that does help us generate some state aid on the reverse side as we come back. But you can kind of see the breakdown of the $145 million here by the different types of things in which money gets spent on. In kind of keeping with that concept of where the money is going and the different codes, this slide is just a brief representation of the past 3 years, just kind of see how things have progressed over the past 3 years in each of those areas in our spending. It also does show here the difference between the current school year and next year's proposed budget. You can kind of see where the majority of increases would be going to. Nothing here out of the ordinary, but just a slide to help people see the demonstration of over the years kind of how things are working. As we talk about school budgets, one of the most important things that people always want to know about is how are you balancing the budget. In New York State, school districts are required to present their communities with both a spending plan and a revenue plan. So we have to demonstrate how the numbers add up to have a zero deficit at the end of the day. So that's called balancing our budget. It's not the same as a municipality and or a state or a federal government. They don't have to balance their budget. They simply have to provide the community with a spending plan. We're kind of the opposite of that, and so the next part of the presentation just talks about how we plan to balance our budget here in Rome for the year. On this slide, you'll see our revenue sources. We've already talked about this. State aid, property taxes, and federal funds are where we get most of our money. Next year, our appropriated fund balance and reserves is a fairly large portion of the revenue side of the district's budget to help offset any of those costs going out the door without having to remove programs or reduce staff. For next year, our estimated revenues total $138,228,624. You can see it's slightly over $11 million more in revenue coming up than we have currently. And this slide, again, just shows you a 3-year historical of our actual revenues projected for the current year, which we won't have actual figures to the month of August, and then the estimated for next year. Just kind of works through. You can see we've had some positives in revenue in the past couple years, specifically with the foundation aid and the state's requirement to fully fund foundation aids. It has been a benefit of Rome. Some districts not so much, but Rome has positively benefited from that requirement. In order to help offset that revenue stream and balance our budget, we are proposing a tax levy increase of 2.90% for next year. 2.90% tax levy increase for the Rome City School District would equate to $1,059,754 in new revenue. A lot of people sometimes when they hear taxes, they hear tax increase, you're generating a lot of money. As you can see, 2.9% tax levy increase does not generate a lot of money in the grand scheme of the big picture. If you're talking about a $145 million budget, that percentage increase does very little to help offset some of the district expenses to make sure we're maintaining our programs and our staff as we invest in our future for our students. So we're recommending a 2.9% levy increase. One thing we highlight in our budgets a lot, and I want to make sure that we mention this again, is that the voter-approved tax levy is, again, the maximum amount of taxes the school district can collect in any given year. The actual tax levy is set by the Board of Education in the month of August, and if we get to the end of the year and we close out our financials for the current school year and we recognize that, hey, we don't need 2.9%, we have in the past reduced the tax levy that the voters have approved to a lesser amount that is actually collected. Might be something that most people don't notice or pay attention to, but it is something that the district and the board have worked really hard over the years to make sure that we are collecting only the taxes that we feel we need to make sure we can operate our programs and keep our staff in line, and as I mentioned before, invest in our future, which is our students. Probably more importantly for most people in the community, if you're interested in seeing how a tax increase may impact you personally, this slide does show how a 2.9% tax increase would affect a $50,000 home, $100,000 home, and a $150,000 home. Just basic math through here, I'll use the middle column of $100,000. 2.9% increase will, in total for the year, increase your tax bill by $187. So you can kind of know your assessed value of your home, help you kind of figure out how that might impact you. But this slide just is a small example of what you may be expecting or anticipating if there was a 2.9% increase. Important to know, factors that impact your personal tax rate. The state and federal aid can affect it, not so much anymore. The state budget is passed, so we know what our state aid numbers are for the year. But things that could change on your end could be the change in the assessment of your property value, could be a change in equalization rate that helps either raise property tax or lower property tax, and it could be a change in a star exemption. All three of those last three things are set by the state of New York. We don't have any control over them, but it's important as a property owner that you understand other factors besides the school district that could impact a change in your tax rate. Most people think that the school district just sets things. We have very little to do other than saying we're requesting or asking for a 2.9% increase in the taxes, and how that may affect your home. A lot of those come from other areas. In closing, as we wrap up the entire budget and look at it together, the proposed budget for next year is $145,869,432. This slide shows our anticipated revenues and then the difference between revenues and proposed expenditures. The bottom three lines show how we plan to balance that budget. Just over $1 million in tax levy increase. Our allocation of reserves at just more than $3.6 million, and then allocation of our fund balance at $4 million. So we are by and large using reserves and fund balance to balance the budget, and this is just a safeguard protecting our staff, protecting our programs for our students, and really looking at the future and trying to maintain as much as we can as we move through. Again, going back to the beginning of the presentation, managing the budget is extraordinarily important, and over the years we've been able to not expend the entire budget and be able to put that money back into savings and grow our savings. So we hope to continue doing that with this budget here. So you are aware, in the event that it is necessary, districts are required to present a contingency budget for next school year. Our contingency budget amount would be $144,809,678. Contingency budgets fund a lot of things, but not everything that you would want. This slide just kind of walks through what is and is not allowable under the law for a contingency budget. Generally speaking, contingency budgets have not needed to be a thing or be worried about probably for about 20, 30 years in New York State, but we're still required to talk to you about it so you have an idea of what would be in there if it got to that point. The most important thing really to understand is that a contingency budget becomes enacted by either two unsuccessful community budget votes or after one unsuccessful budget attempt and an enactment by the board. So there are a couple of ways that could be acted upon. but our contingency budget, again, just under $145 million for next year. Wrapping it up as we get towards the end, just a reminder of when the vote is. We are looking at next Tuesday, May 16th. From 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., you can see the voting locations in our 10 wards. Many of them are the same combining wards. The only change for next year, for this year, versus last year, is the 3rd ward will be voting at the South Rome Senior Center. Everyone else will be voting in the same location that they voted in last year. On the ballot, besides saying yes or no to the proposed budget, that will be your first thing that you get to choose. Our Board of Education member propositions. We have 4 open seats for this coming year. 3 positions are for a 3-year term beginning on July 1st of 2023. And the 4th position is for a 4th seat that begins immediately following the election and expires on June 30th of 2024. So it's a 1-year term. We have a total of 5 candidates. If you're interested in learning more about them, there is information on our website, on our budget page linked below here. And there also will probably be a community forum coming up in some regard through the NAACP. They usually support us in doing a community forum for board members if you're interested in getting to know them. In closing, I'd like to thank you all for the continued support of our school district, the work that our students do every day in the classrooms, the work that our teachers are doing with those students, our support staff supporting everybody, and our administrators. Without the continued support of our community, none of this would be possible. Budget season is always challenging for a lot of people because there's a lot of unknowns, but we do appreciate your support. We appreciate your commitment and your investment to our students and to education here in Rome. And we look forward to continuing to partner with our community members, our students, our staff, and we encourage you, please vote on May 16th. Thank you and have a great day.